Hey everybody, I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera Show. Canning and preserving. I've got my sleeves rolled up and we're going to get started today on trying to keep in season things that kind of go out of season that we miss in the fall and winter months. One of my favorites is, of course, okra. I use it quite a bit on the show. And then fig preserves are another one that I really love to pull out all different times of the year. So we're going to do both of those, and then I've also got a specialist that's going to give us some really great tips about canning and preserving throughout the show today. So gather around because we're going to get started with this pickled okra, which is a great way to crisp up that, you know, some of our kids say, well, I don't want to eat that, it's kind of slimy and yucky, but this is a great way for it to be crisp, great on a charcuterie tray or just as an accompaniment to any other dish that you might have that you're enjoying. All right, so you want to choose okra that maybe is about the same size as the jar that you're going to use. And if they're a little bit too long, you want to just take a sharp knife and cut the ends off. So I've got some of these prepared and these are ready to go. And what makes this so beautiful, as you can see from the ones that I've already gone ahead and done, is how they're packaged in the jar. So the ingredients that make the pickling spice so great, we've got mustard seed, coriander seed, red pepper flakes, because you want it to have just a little bit of a kick. We've got fennel seed, celery seed, and then you can use just plain black peppercorns, but I love to use the tricolor just to make it just a little bit more colorful. So just kind of mix that up in a glass bowl. And now I'm going to bring my jars forward. And this is the part that's so much fun. You want to cut a lemon and have about a 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch lemon for the bottom of each jar. And then just peel your garlic cloves. You're going to leave those whole. And this flavor is just going to just penetrate this. All right, so now I'm going to take the okra, and some of them you can leave the little tip on. You want to just alternate going up and down with them and get a good handful together so that you can get started. And just let those go straight down in the jar. And of course, when you put the hot liquid in, this is going to shrink a little bit. So really push them down in there as far as you can get. And this is what, you know, a lot of times, this is something that you can do in the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall. Then you've got a great gift when holiday time comes, something that you've done yourself. You may actually be growing some okra in your yard. So you've got those down, and now I'm going to take half of the spice and just put it down in there. And I'm going to go ahead and do this one while I'm here, because all of that will kind of sink down to the bottom. All right, so let's get the rest of these. And you know, okra kind of discolors a little bit, but through this process with the hot liquid that's going to go on top, none of that's going to show up. I'm also going to be showing you today in Vera's Corner how to get these jars prepared for the process, because you know we all keep these jars and they're up in the top of the cabinet, but when it's time to actually preserve these vegetables, you really want to make sure that you've sterilized not only the jar but the lid. Okay, look at that. This is going to be almost exactly perfect getting those in. All right, so when we come back from the break, I'm going to get the liquid that's going in here prepared. And then I want to introduce now Dr. Elizabeth Andress from the University of Georgia that's going to give us some tips on canning and preserving.
We recommend a short boiling water canning process if you're going to store your homemade fig preserves at room temperature. If the sugar concentration is high enough, only a short process time is needed to kill any molds that might get into the jar during filling and to remove most of the air from the headspace before the jar seals.
I'm really excited about this. You know, it's been quite a number of years since I did this myself. And, you know, for those of you out there that are looking for a way to just get in the kitchen with your young person and talk about the things that you did as a child, this would be a great thing to do. It's just so pretty, and they can, you know, when you give it for Christmas gift, they can say they had something to do with it. But it really looks great in the jar. And, you know, a lot of times on the VeryVera show, I'll say, let's take a Southern recipe and put a twist on it. So if you want to twist this up just a little bit, you can use the purple okra too with the green. Would be really nice looking in those jars. So while we were away during the break, I got the liquid that's going in for the pickling done. And it's a combination, equal parts of water and vinegar. And you want to use a really good vinegar when you're doing this. I highly recommend the Bragg Organic Cider Vinegar. It's really popular right now. It's got a great flavor. And then sugar and salt is the liquid. So I'm going to take that now. It's good and hot. It's been boiling for several minutes, and now I've got a funnel that's specifically made for this purpose that just fits around the opening of that jar. And we're just going to pour that hot liquid over the okra. I should have just enough to do both. You know, and if you don't have quite enough, which I'll need to do just a little bit more for that jar, we can boil up a little bit more of that. But you want to make sure that it's good and covered. And then on your lids and your rings, the lid, the ring part, you can sterilize and use over and over, but you want the jar to seal, so you want to use brand new lids every time you do this. But we're going to put the lid on to a very good tight squeeze. And now I've got my hot hands. Y'all might have seen these on TV. So I have to tell you, I was pretty nervous using these for the very first time, because I thought, I'm getting ready to put my hand down in boiling water. But they actually work for that purpose. So I've got my water boiling in my canning pot. I'm just gonna put the jar down, and you can see my hands going right down in that boiling water. And now I'm going to put the lid on that. I want to add a little bit more liquid to that one before I put it in. But I'm going to put the lid on this, and it's going to cook now for about 15 minutes. And once they're cool, we're going to take them out and put them on the cold towel. But I want to also say that today we're going to be giving away this entire canning set, because I know you're dying to maybe get back in the kitchen and do some of this. So it's a big canning pot, the rack that goes down in it, the tongs that I'm going to use in a few minutes to lift those out, the funnel that I used. We've got a set of hot hands, so you can try this and see if you can, you know, utilize these in your kitchen, or when you're cooking on the grill, you can get really close and your hands don't get hot. And then one of Dr. Andress's cookbooks about canning and preserving that'll come in very handy when you're deciding that you're wanting to make some sort of jelly or jam that you've never done before. She's got some great tips there. So come back with us in just a few minutes, but in the meantime, Dr. Andress is back with us for another quick tip on canning and preserving.
It is important when filling jars for canning to leave the correct amount of head space or empty space at the top of the jar. This provides for good liquid coverage of the food during storage to protect the quality. The correct amount of headspace also prevents liquid from spilling out of the jar as the food in there expands during the heat of processing.
Vera's Corner is brought to you by Georgia Bank and Trust and Southern Bank and Trust.
When you're preserving or canning your favorite fruits and vegetables, it's really important to make sure that you've sterilized your jars and your lids. So let me show you how to do that. The first thing you want to do is to check your mason or ball jars for any broken or chipped glass. Then wash carefully in warm soap and water. Rinse and place on a clean towel. Now your jars are ready for the boiling water canner. Pour boiling water over your lids and rings, and then set your timer for 10 minutes. Carefully remove the jars to a clean towel. Do the same with the lids and rings. And now you're ready to can. Welcome back, everybody, and I am really having a great time with the canning today, and I hope you are too. I hope it brings back some memories of your childhood, but I want you to introduce this to your own children as just a great way to enjoy ending the season with some of your favorite fruits and vegetables. So while we were away during the break, I got the jars out of the rumbling, boiling water where they were for 15 minutes with the pickled okra, and now they're on a towel cooling, and I just want to also recommend that you make sure you have a towel on the counter, because if your countertop is cool like this one is and the hot jar hits it, it could actually crack that jar. So put a towel or some sort of pad down on the counter, and then you also want to listen for the pop, and that will make you know that it has sealed, that the rubber ring has sealed to the jar and that it's good to go, just in a cabinet now instead of the refrigerator. But if for any reason you don't hear the popping noise on all of your jars, you can just put that jar in the refrigerator and it'll be fine. All right, so fig preserves. You know, as a kid, we would be out of all of our favorite cookies, and Mom would always say, well, I've got some fig Newtons, and I thought, I'm not going to eat a fig Newton. But now figs are one of my absolute favorites. I love it sweet, salty, I use it on so many different things. So making fig preserves to me is a great way to introduce figs to a friend. Give them a recipe to use it for an appetizer or as a relish with a pork tenderloin. So the figs are still just really coming off of season, but if for any reason you can't get a hold of fresh figs, the Fresh Market has not only the figs but the okra right now that you can use to do these recipes that we've done today. So ahead of the show, I got the figs cut. You want to just cut the stem off the end and then cut them into fourths, and that's because I want a nice chunky fig in the preserves that I'm doing today. If for any reason you want it to cook down more like a jelly or a jam, then you're gonna just wanna chop them up pretty fine. But I've got those with some sugar, water, lemon zest, and lemon, and these have sat overnight, and now I've got them on top of the stove cooking down. The ones I did earlier have already cooked down, and you can see that it's just really a beautiful, thick, nice consistency. You can see the fig seeds throughout. And just like most of my recipes, if you want to put a twist on what you're doing today, the ones that are getting ready to cook down now, I'm going to add some balsamic vinegar. That'll make your recipe a little bit different from others. All right, so now it's time to get our cleaned jars, and for these I'm using a little bit smaller jelly jar for this part of the process. So I've got my colander that I'm using here, and we're just going to bring this over. I'm just going to start adding these to the jar. These are going to be so good, and I should have enough to goo it just below the edge of the jar. And with the canning process, when you're using a stovetop canner, you want to make sure that when you put these jars down in it, that water is really boiling to a rumbling roll when you do it. All right, so I am going to keep putting these in the jars. I certainly want you to come back from the break because we're going to go through all the steps to win the canning set. And then Dr. Andress has got one last tip for you and some instructions about canning and preserving. So come back with us in just a few minutes.
A few notes on boiling water canning. If at any time the water in your canner stops boiling during your process time, return the water to a full boil and start timing your process over from the very beginning. Also, when it's time to store your jars, remove the ring band, wash and dry the jar, and that will help prevent any molds that might grow in residues that get left on the jar.
Welcome back, everybody, and what a spread, all starting with things that we've canned and kept in season all year long because we just took a few minutes to do something different and fun. And you know, as far as where did this all come from with me? It just really takes me back to days where, you know, I had a relative that always had a vegetable garden, and we would pick things and can tomatoes and make pickles, all kinds of things. And then the fig preserves is one of my fondest memories of making jellies early on in my childhood with, again, an older relative. So if you're looking to things to do with your grandchildren, I highly recommend this activity. All right, so let's get back to what we did. Came on the show today with making the okra, pickled okra. So we got the okra cut, we put the lemon and the spices down at the bottom, we poured the hot liquid over it, sealed the jars, put it down into the water bath to preserve, and it just is such a beautiful component. Even if it just sits on a shelf in your kitchen, it's just so pretty to look at. And then we've added to this a great label that are going to be available on our blog on VeryVera.com. If you want to print these labels to go on your jars, those just look really great. Now the fig preserves. When we left just a few minutes ago, I had put those down in the boiling water. Those have come out. I listened for the pop on each one of them to make sure that they sealed properly. And again, that's just really pretty in the jar. We've got the fig preserve label to go on top as well. And now what are we going to do with all these wonderful things? Well, one of the suggestions I had was a charcuterie board that, you know, you've got your meats, your cheeses, you know, a lot of times fresh fruits, but what about putting the pickled okra on your charcuterie board? This charcuterie board is one of my absolute favorites. If you want to buy one just like it, they're available at uncommongoods.com. It has the ampersand in the middle of it so that it gives you almost the design. So if you're not real artistic, it's the perfect way to go. But just taking some of the meats, the deli meats that you can pick up from the fresh market, prosciutto ham, different salamis, a smoked prosciutto, really just makes this so wonderful. I've added in a couple of different cheeses, a goat cheese, which would be really good with fig preserves. And then just an assortment of crackers. The wheat thins fit perfectly in the center of that. So that is a great appetizer tray that's ready to go with something that you made from scratch. All right, now those fig preserves, the ones that I didn't can today that we're cooking down, just look how beautiful. I mean, I could just eat this with a spoon and a bowl. As a matter of fact, that would be great over vanilla ice cream if you've never tried that. But I actually had some beef tenderloin, so I cooked a half of a beef tenderloin, just seared it, really pepper crusted it, and now I'm just gonna ladle these fig preserves over the top. So whether it's beef tenderloin, duck, lamb, pork tenderloin, what a great accompaniment to a meat platter. If you didn't want to pour it on top, you could let it be on the side, but just for the point of using everything that we had today, let's add in a little bit of the okra as an extra garnish on the top. I just love the way that looks. All right, so I've been teasing you about this giveaway that we were going to do, so let's talk about that for just a minute. All right, so what we're going to do is we're giving away the complete set for you to be able to do the canning. So it's the beginner canning set that includes the big pot that goes on top of your stove, the rack that's on the inside, a colander for you to rinse or prepare any of your vegetables or fruits, the canning tool set, of course a VeryVera apron, the ladle to put the containers together so that you don't have anything pouring on top of the counter. You're going to get Dr. Andress's book. You're going to also get the hot hands that we're using today, and then of course some of the labels to put on these jars when you're finished. To enter the contest, you need to like us on Facebook, like the contest post, comment with the town that you're watching the show, and then share the post with all your friends. So I hope that somebody out there will just win this and really look forward to doing canning with your just by yourself on a pleasant afternoon or with your children or grandchildren. I want to also remind you that we're getting ready to completely redo the kitchen, and then next week I've got a very special guest. Cheryl Day from Back in the Day Bakery in Savannah will be joining us to make some of her wonderful desserts. So thank you to Dr. Andress for helping us with the special tips today. And as I always say on the Very Vera Show, no matter what you do it in good taste, and come back again with me next week.